He backed off and pushed the door open. We stepped out into bright sunlight. I had to squint at first before my eyes adjusted. When they did, I stopped short. We weren't alone. Standing in front of the Taj Mahal were people, thousands of people. I had found the Ravinians. Journal number 37, chapter 42. The mass of people stood silently, looking at us, or at the Taj Mahal. I couldn't tell. Nobody said a word. It was eerie. St. Dane and I stood on the top step, looking down at them. St. Dane laughed. He was bleeding. He was beaten. He could barely breathe. But he laughed. He gave me a sideways look and said, "Now, we'll see which spirit is in control of Hala." I said, "The spirit doesn't control Hala. The people of Hala control the spirit." The smile dropped from his face. A shout came from the crowd. "What have you done? What have you brought down upon us?" St. Dane raised his hands and said, "I am protecting you. Even now our army is returning to wipe away the vermin that has dared to invade our—" "No!" someone shouted. "They have no quarrel with us. They have only destroyed the guards. They seek refuge." "Refuge? This is Ravinia. We don't provide refuge." "And why not?" someone shouted. The crowd started shouting. St. Dane didn't know how to react. They were no longer on his side, and he didn't have any Ravinian Dato guards to keep them in line. He held up his hands, trying to quiet them, but that only made them shout louder. It was awesome. Somebody stepped out of the crowd and walked up the steps. It was Suri. He climbed directly toward St. Dane, stopping a few stairs below us. He turned to the crowd and raised his hand. The crowd became quiet. Suri looked at me and asked, "You okay?" "I am now," I said. "You have to see something," he said. Suri turned to the crowd and shouted out, "Please, let us pass. He must see." The crowd obeyed. At the base of the stairs, the people parted, forming an alleyway for us to walk through. I couldn't believe it. "What is it?" I asked, dumbfounded. Suri smiled. "Nah, you should see it." He looked at St. Dane and snapped, "You too." We both grabbed one of St. Dane's arms and pulled him down the stairs. We hit the bottom and walked through the passageway the people had formed. Nobody spoke. Nobody made a sound. It was eerie. They stood silently, staring at St. Dane as we passed. I saw the hatred in their eyes. I thought back to the moment when Mark was supposed to have been executed. As much as St. Dane had whipped the crowd into a lynch mob, there were many who weren't swept up in the emotion. They had questions and doubts. It gave me hope that some small seed of humanity still existed in the hearts of the Ravinians. What we saw as we passed by them outside the Taj Mahal confirmed it. I wondered if St. Dane realized it. If he did, he didn't show it. He held his head up proudly, staring ahead, making eye contact with nobody. As we walked, I realized that the crowd wasn't made up of just Ravinians. The farther we walked, the more I saw others seeded into the group. We went from clean-looking Ravinians to scruffy-looking exiles and Gars. I even recognized some of the rebels. The people were jammed together, shoulder to shoulder, all the way to the front wall of the conclave. Nobody spoke. All eyes were on St. Dane as he passed. I looked at Suri and shrugged, as if to ask, "What the hell is going on?" "Wait," he replied. I didn't know what to think. The Dados were sure to attack at any moment. What were all the exiles doing inside like this? They should have been getting ready to defend the conclave. We were nearly at the front wall. Up ahead I saw the travelers, waiting at the bottom of the stairs that led to the top of the wall. All of them, Gunny, Patrick, Aisha, and Ellie, were there as well. We walked St. Dane right up to Uncle Press. The two stood there, toe to toe, glaring at one another. They were two old friends, two enemies, two warriors who had reached the end of the battle. "I made a huge mistake," Uncle Press said. "Only one," St. Dane replied. Uncle Press nodded. "Yes, only one. I should have had more faith in the people of Hala, because in the end, the battle was won by the people, and that's the way it was meant to be." St. Dane frowned. He had no idea what Uncle Press meant. Neither did I, for that matter. Uncle Press motioned for us to take St. Dane up the stairs. I was totally confused. What the heck were we doing? Cerie and I pushed St. Dane ahead of us. We were followed by Uncle Press and the rest of the travelers. On top of the steps was a large platform. 20 feet away was the edge of the conclave wall. It was low enough to be able to look over, but high enough so you wouldn't fall. Cerie and I stopped St. Dane on top and waited for the others to join us. We were all there, all 11 travelers, along with Boone. Last up were Mark and Courtney. Courtney came over to me and touched my cheek. I winced. It hurt. "You look like hell," Courtney said. I shrugged. She looked at St. Dane, then back at me. "He looks worse." She smiled. Awesome. The whole way from the Taj Mahal, I wondered why St. Dane hadn't tried to get away by turning into a bird or smoke or something. It was Uncle Press who had the answer to that. He walked over to the edge and looked out, then turned back to St. Dane. "The spirit of Solara is well on the way to being restored," he began, "thanks to what happened here today. Just as important, the dark spirit of Solara has diminished." That had to be it. St. Dane no longer had the power. "The final victory here was not decided by the travelers, or by the exiles from Second Earth, or the Gars from Elong. It was decided by the Ravinians." For the first time since we had left the Taj Mahal, I saw St. Dane react. He stiffened. "What do you mean?" he growled. "This has been a prison for them. An attractive prison, but a prison. They knew they were being controlled, but they had no hope of freedom until today. Until we arrived. Until your guards were eliminated. For the first time in a long time, these people understand that they have the freedom to choose their own destiny, not the one that you impose on them." St. Dane looked shaken. "But they live in luxury. They are the chosen." "They were slaves to your vision, as much as anyone else in Hala. Today we brought them their freedom." "I don't believe it," St. Dane said. "I am their benefactor. I protect them. I reward them." All they wanted was the freedom to choose their own destiny. "And today they did that," Uncle Press said. "How?" St. Dane shot back. Uncle Press gestured for us to look over the edge. St. Dane and I slowly walked forward. As the scene below revealed itself, I thought I was looking at a painting. I'm serious, that's how impossible the image was. St. Dane gave a little gasp. He was just as surprised as I was. Down on the ground, for as far as I could see, were dados. Thousands of them. Multiple thousands of them. It was the army that marched on Elong. I saw red Ravinians, the green uniforms and golden helmets of the Quillen Guards, thousands of Mark-looking dados, and just as many Klees. They had made it back through the flume downtown and marched along the same route that the exiles and Gars had taken to get to the conclave. That's where their journey ended. These dados were no longer functioning. They were frozen, deactivated, dead, whatever you want to call it. It was an impossible sea of dados that stood frozen. They filled the expanse between the conclave and the river, continued across the double-barge bridge, and stretched out on the far side of the river, back toward the city. There was no end to them. Uncle Press said, "This was the work of your Ravinians. They entered the Dado Control Center and deactivated every last one. They ended the war. You're looking at a sea of worthless junk." Now I knew why there were so few Ravinians around during the attack. I had thought they were cowards, when in reality they had seen their chance. The Dados weren't magic. They were mechanical. They had to be controlled from somewhere, and the Ravinians knew where. In the end, the positive spirit of Solara had triumphed over the darker motives of man. St. Dane's chosen had chosen the right path. St. Dane pulled back from the wall, his eyes darting left and right. He looked panicked.
"I don't believe it,"
he cried.
"It cannot be."
He ran across the platform to look down inside the conclave and the multitude that was inside, staring up at him.
"People of Ravinia,"
he shouted,
"it isn't too late. The choice is still yours. You are the elite, the perfect, the future of Hala."
The people glared at him blankly, unmoved, silent.
"Take back what is rightfully yours. You have earned it by proving your own excellence. You don't want to live like animals. You have chosen to excel, to thrive. You aren't shackled by the common trials of those less deserving than you."
The travelers stood silently. St. Dane turned to them. What he expected any of us to say, I didn't know. He was breathing hard. He looked desperate. He looked older. Was that possible? St. Dane's face had changed yet again. He was deteriorating.
"Listen to me,"
he called out to the crowd.
"You cannot give up in mere moments what your ancestors have worked centuries to achieve. You are better than that, far better. Together, we will rebuild this world. Ravinia will spread beyond these walls. But that cannot happen until we eliminate those who are not deserving."
Every last person in the conclave stared up at St. Dane silently. It was eerie. Courtney stepped up next to me and grabbed my arm. "Did you see that?" she whispered. I did. For a brief moment, St. Dane had seemed transparent.
"Look at those around you!"
St. Dane bellowed.
"The interlopers who have invaded our sanctuary. Is that what you want? Are these the kind of people you want to share your lives with?"
It happened again. St. Dane momentarily faded, then came back. I looked to Uncle Press. He nodded in understanding. He knew. St. Dane pulled himself away from the edge. He was losing it. His blue eyes had turned from fierce to frightened. He reached out to the other travelers.
"There is still hope,"
he cried.
"Still time. Perhaps I have been too resolute. Yes, too arrogant. I can admit that. There is a better way. We can build a better Hala. All of us, together. That was always my goal."
The travelers didn't react. He went to each in turn, looking for some kind of confirmation, some hope. They all stood silently, with no expression. St. Dane's face was aging. He seemed shorter. He was stooped, no longer standing erect. He ran to Uncle Press.
"We have been friends. You know I only meant well."
"Perhaps," Uncle Press said with no emotion. "At one time."
"We can bring that back,"
St. Dane exclaimed.
"That spirit, it can be as it once was. It can. I was only trying to help the people of Hala. You know that."
Uncle Press didn't say another word. St. Dane then came to me. We stood eye to eye. Both of our faces were battered from the beating we had taken and given. He clutched at my shirt.
"Pendragon,"
he gasped, his voice getting raspy.
"My adversary, we are not so different, you and I."
St. Dane's image blinked again. For a moment I saw right through him, literally.
"We both want what is best for Hala. We just come at it from different perspectives. Think, Barbie. Together, you and I embody exactly what Solara is about. There is no right and wrong. There is only balance. Together, you and I, we can restore that balance and heal the wounds."
You mean the wounds that you inflicted? I said. St. Dane was losing strength. He started to cry. He fell to one knee while still clutching at me.
"It wasn't supposed to happen this way,"
he sobbed.
"I made mistakes. I was weak. I was seduced by my own vision. You, of all people, should understand that. You know that Hala is imperfect, and I am the embodiment of Hala. Forgive me. Please. Save me."
I can't, I said.
"Why?"
he cried.
"Why can't you?"
St. Dane was sobbing. His image winked out again, then returned, but not fully. He raised his chin, and I looked into those blue-white eyes for the last time. "Because this is the way it was meant to be." St. Dane dropped his head, let out a guttural cry, and disappeared. The demon was dead. His spirit had ended. It was only fitting that in the end I wasn't the one who had destroyed St. Dane. His final undoing came at the hands of the very people he'd set out to dominate. The people of Hala finished St. Dane. In doing so, they took back control of their own destiny.